Hey, soccer fans, welcome back to the Feed the Fire podcast, where we are talking all things Major League Soccer playoffs and the Chicago Fire. Obviously, mutually exclusive, as the Fire are not in the playoffs, if you didn't need me to remind you of all of that. Anyway, in this episode, big names to talk about. First of all, Matt Miazga, he's a crazy person. We're going to talk about that. Nextly, Robert Lewandowski, rumored to the Fire. Yeah, we're going to get into that too. Also, we're going to hear a world-class rant by our special guest, John Donovan, about current Chicago Fire interim coach, Frank Klopas, as well as Luis Suarez's signing with Inter Miami. So for all of that and more, stay tuned. Hey, Fire fans, welcome back to another episode of Feed the Fire. We appreciate you tuning in each and every week to listen to the show, our little slice of soccer heaven here. We're going to start off recapping what we know about Major League Soccer playoffs to this point. As you remember, the first round this year is a best of three series, and boy, did we see one heck of a series with FC Cincinnati advancing past the Red Bulls of New York in 2 games. Now, that first game, blowout, dominant performance by Cincinnati at Cincinnati, but having to go on the road against a Red Bull team is no easy task. Cincinnati accomplished it, though. They swept the Red Bulls in 2 games, if you want to call it that. First to 2, best of 3, however you look at it. But the interesting thing coming out of this game, not that Cincinnati's the better team and there's a renewed rivalry or whatever it is, none of that. Really, the headline out of this one is Matt Miazga, for all the wrong reasons. He may be the first player I've ever seen to get 3 yellow cards in 2 games, but no red cards. He got a yellow card in each of the 2 games in the series, but then after the play was over in the second game, he got his 3rd yellow card from the referee because of his confrontation with the fans, taunting them, egging them on, doing whatever it was he'd do. I haven't watched the full replays of it yet, but the fans are throwing trash at him, hurling insults, everything you would ever want to do to just an awful opposing player. So he gets the yellow card there. He is now suspended for Cincinnati's next match as a result of playoff yellow card accumulation. But then it gets better. Miazga had to be pulled out of the referee's locker room by a communications department employee of FC Cincinnati. He somehow got into the referee's locker room, which by rule is off limits to everyone but referees. Who knows what the league is going to do to him as a result of that. So yeah, as much fun as Matt Miazga is when he puts on the red, white, and blue, he might be a crazy person when he's wearing the blue and orange, that's for sure. Speaking of the league having to investigate things, news coming out of Philadelphia that star defender Kai Wagner is now suspended for the next 3 games as the league found he said racial slurs towards Bobby Wood in their first game against the Revolution. So that is going to put Philadelphia at a huge disadvantage over their next 2 games as they look to wrap up the series against New England. They won the first game. Next game is tomorrow, the 8th, which coming at you recording at a late Tuesday night instead of my usual Monday night. Had a little tickle in my throat, a little bit of a sore throat. That's what you get for trick-or-treating with your kids in the ice and snow here in the Chicagoland area, and then having to, do full day's work and parental responsibilities. The voice needs a little chance to recharge here. But yeah, the story for the Philadelphia New England Revolution playoff series is now Kai Wagner's 3-game suspension for racial slurs against Bobby Wood. And unfortunately, we're not going to, again, see the 2 teams at their best going at it. We're going to see teams with a suspension. Similar to the Crew and Atlanta, where we saw Atlanta without Thiago Almada in their first game due to red card suspension. And we saw how listless and lifeless and no creativity in the Atlanta attack without him. Meanwhile, now In their second game, they end up with a stunning 4-2 victory in the Benz with their full complement of players. Giacomakis gets things going early on for them. Sande Silva adds one, Mascara adds one, Almada gets the fourth, and then Cucho and Arston end up putting a couple on the board for Columbus. But a great performance by Atlanta to level things there. I still stand by my pick that Atlanta is going to advance past Columbus and win the MLS Cup. I was a little less confident in that pick after that first game, but now it's, all bets are off. One more game in Columbus to decide it, and I think the pressure definitely going to be a lot heavily on Columbus to come back home and win that. Now, in the other Eastern Conference series, Nashville is currently losing to Orlando 1-0, and that could be all she wrote there for that Southern derby, if you will, for that matchup of those two teams. Really unfortunate way for Nashville's season to end if it does go out 2 straight losses to Orlando City. Now, there's no shame in losing to Orlando City, who's been an excellent team throughout the course of the season with excellent players. But for a Nashville team who just has never been able to get over that hump and bag a trophy, this is going to be just another disappointment. And it wouldn't surprise me to see this team try to shake a few things up, whether with the roster or on the coaching staff, regardless of your feelings toward Gary Smith. Maybe it's just time to move on. Looking over in the Western Conference, the big upset, if you will, Kansas City beating St. Louis. Now, is this as big of an upset as I want to make it? Because I'm so happy to see St. Louis or St. LL Louis get knocked out of the playoffs? Maybe. When you consider that Kansas City has been the best team in MLS, or at least the best record since June, since I think coming back from Leagues Cup, no, maybe it is not like the most shocking or surprising upset, considering Kansas City had finally been fully healthy for the first time in a long time. Getting contributions from Russell, Kinda, Shallowy, Pulido, everyone pitching in, right? Tamilia coming up big in that playoff PK shootout against San Jose early. Everyone is playing their best soccer for SKC right now. Smoked them 4-1 in the first game, winning again at home in Kansas City 2-1. Honestly, I kind of think St. Louis was sipping a little of their own Kool-Aid going into this matchup. They've been playing kind of that we're the expansion team underdog, and they didn't know how to transition. Like, you guys won the Western Conference. Good accomplishment. Definitely not the best expansion season in history, and that is not even a debate. St. Louis did not have the best expansion season in history. You didn't win a trophy. You didn't win a knockout game. You didn't win a playoff game. You didn't win a tournament game. There were no trophies. You just won the Western Conference, right? It's a really, really good season for an expansion team, and probably better than they would have thought. But don't try to tell me you had the best expansion season ever. No, you didn't. No, you didn't. And maybe it's the home fan in me, but I think the Chicago Fire is where you start the discussion. The 98 season, where I think they came in second or third in the Supporter Shield standing and then win MLS Cup, the first ever professional American sports team to win the league title in their expansion season, by the way. So no, you do not have the best expansion season ever, St. Louis, and that's all I'm going to say about it. But yeah, I think they were drinking their own Kool-Aid. They didn't know how to transition into the favorite role. And if they wanted to keep saying, oh, nobody believes in this, well, yeah, that loses its luster after a while and after you win the Western Conference and are the number 1 seed. So I just don't think they knew how to handle this. And on top of it, they did not have a good game plan for Kansas City. Staying in the West, LAFC advanced past Vancouver. Now, a lot of people, I think, pick that one as oh, LAFC Vancouver. Obviously LAFC, right? They're the better team, better players, all this. But when you really looked at this, was a very entertaining 2-game stretch. It was a 5-2 victory in the first game, 1-0 victory in the second game for LAFC, but a very, very entertaining matchup. Some great play from both teams, offensively, defensively. These were really, really entertaining. At times with questionable refereeing, I will say, but LAFC, a deserved conference semifinalist there. Dallas ended up beating Seattle in their second game to draw level in the series. That next match is coming up on November 10th to decide the winner there. And Houston and RSL played last night. RSL ties it up after a 1-1 draw during regulation and then winning 5-4 in PKs. So they are not done. Some of that RSL playoff magic is still hanging out there, though I fully expect Houston to bounce back at home and advance in this one. Now, I titled this episode Big Names, Big Rumors, because today, if you were on Chicago Fire Twitter at all, you saw the rumors that the Chicago Fire are pursuing Polish international, Bayern Munich legend, and current Barcelona star striker Robert Lewandowski. That's right. Let me say it again. The Chicago Fire are rumored to be pursuing Robert Lewandowski, and the article I saw came from the MLS Multiplex blog. You can go check out. I retweeted it. My Twitter handle is @GlassHouseSoccer. Or, hey, if you want to chat about it or let me send you the article, email me, glasshouseSoccer@gmail.com. But yes, this MLS Multiplex article suggested that the Chicago Fire are pursuing Lewandowski. So are other clubs. People are saying that the Galaxy are rumored after letting go of Chicharito, though people are noting that Chicharito and Lewandowski are both 35 years old, aging strikers a bit. But I would say Lewandowski is a bit of a safer bet than Chicharito, at least on the injury front. And if you want to pull the aging striker thing, yeah, he's still doing it for Barcelona. Let's see. He has 28 goals in 44 appearances. Last I checked Wikipedia for Barcelona. So he is still doing it. Just to throw some other numbers out there, 238 goals and 253 appearances for Bayern Munich. And then on the international scale, 81 goals and 144 appearances for Poland. So he is still a high-level player. His physical play and his ability to strike from distance, his ability to win aerial balls off set pieces especially, would make him, I think, an excellent striker in Major League Soccer. I think he would continue to have success. First question, is his age a concern? And this is for any team that wants to sign him, especially in MLS, given the travel, given field conditions, and not just turf versus grass, but just terrible grass conditions. Soldier Field, Chicago. So you're going to have to manage his load, manage his minutes, manage all of that if you do sign him, not to mention the fact that the MLS schedule is only getting more congested with league play, friendlies, exhibitions, preseason tournaments, and then getting into league play, U.S. Open Cup, Leagues Cup, and anything else that your team gets into. If he comes to the Fire, he'll probably have the least amount of games out of any of those. But if he ends up going to a team in MLS that also has to play in Champions League, there's a few more games for him there. So, is his age a concern? He's still producing, so I wouldn't keep that as a concern. He is coming off a 3-week ankle injury, according to Transfer Market. He was out for 3 weeks in October, just this last month, with an ankle injury. And historically, he usually misses either a week to 3 weeks every season. So he'll miss, a handful of games every season. His teams obviously lived with that, and when he was playing in for Bayern Munich, there were probably some teams towards the bottom of that table. Let's be honest, Bayern Munich didn't really need him for. There's probably a couple games that Barcelona's playing against some mid-table Spanish league teams that they really aren't going to miss him for. But in MLS, there's going to be a huge drop-off from his talent to the next man up. But also, the league is much more balanced. So his absence will be felt. And is a team going to want to pay the salary he's going to command, knowing that he's probably going to miss 3 to 4 games minimum this upcoming season? And I'm just talking league play, who knows what else. But looking specifically at the Chicago Fire, is this the player that the Chicago Fire should be signing? Is this the kind of player? Does he fit the profile? Well, to be perfectly honest, I have no idea what kind of profile of player the Chicago Fire are looking for, because this front office has signed an $8 million designated player to play the same position as their up-and-coming homegrown, Shaqiri and Gutierrez. This is the front office that has signed Kai Kamara and Kasper Shibilko and an unproven striker. So they had no idea what they were doing. What they were doing was settling. They settled for Kai Kamara because they couldn't find another striker. This is the front office that signed Miguel Navarro and Arnaud Souquet to be wingbacks and then not have a coach know what to do with them and then not play them. This is the team that signed Marin Haile-Selassie to be a depth piece, and he ended up being your number one scorer, spending most of the season coming off the bench. So I have no idea what kind of profile player George Heitz and co. are looking for here. So to say Lewandowski does or does not fit their profile, we don't know what the profile is. Now, does he fit the profile of a big, strong, physical striker who can score in a variety of ways? Yeah, every team would want that. So in that sense, yes, he fits the profile. But we don't know how this club's trying to build. There are rumors that they're going out and trying to sign what probably is going to be a designated player level striker without a head coach. And from a fan's perspective, without knowing who's going to be their technical director and sporting director, but from a practical sense, odds are it's going to be Heitz and Pelser again. Also, as far as we don't know who their coach is, Klopas is still on the bench, so he's going to have a huge influence on the squad, and it's likely that Kostenoglu, who was rumored to be in talks for the head coach position, couldn't get a visa, then was just announced as an assistant coach to Klopas. Likely he will be elevated to the head coach position. Likely. The Chicago Fire haven't said anything. So maybe the fact that we don't know the front office and we don't know the coach isn't really the case. But again, we can only guess because they haven't announced anything. You want to say anything, Chicago Fire? Anyone in the Fire organization listening? We'd love a press conference. We'd love an announcement. Something other than transferring homegrown rights. We'll get to that later. But as far as Lewandowski, he would be a huge improvement on this club. The only strikers that we know of or are still here are, thinking, right? Yorgos Koutsias is the only one. Shibilko is rumored to have been extended, but again, hasn't been announced. Kai Kamara, nothing's been announced on him, but he said he's not coming back. I mean, we got teams who are doing so much more with their rosters and with their coaching staffs, and the Fire haven't even announced who they're picking up their options on. Doesn't make any sense to me, unless Heitz and Pelser are out. But by all accounts, they're not going to be, even though everyone thought they were. That the Mansueto did a 180 on that sometime during the season. It's a very odd situation from the Chicago Fire. Anyway, if the Fire can get Lewandowski, huge upgrade on the field. But here's why I don't want Lewandowski to the Fire. I'll say it again. Here's why I don't want Lewandowski to the Fire. It is going to be a terrible financial signing. Yes, I know Mansueto has extremely deep pockets, but again, he's a businessman. There's only so much money that he can keep dumping into wasted player salaries before he says enough's enough. Hey, maybe another crappy DP signing by Heitz will be what we need to get him out of office, but who knows? If it hasn't happened so far, who knows when it'll happen? But we know Mansueto is investing in academies, youth programs, training centers, all these other things, and I would assume he's not going to want to dump $10 million into a single player. We saw how that worked with Shaqiri. Not well. It would have been much better off. And I said this in our preseason episode or early on in the season when we compared the Chicago Fire roster from a salary standpoint to LAFC. LAFC does not overpay for their DPs. They may only have them for 1.5 seasons or 2 seasons, but LAFC has spread their money around to create a solid roster from the number one starter down to, say, the 17th or 18th man on that roster, where the Chicago Fire have put the vast majority of their money in like 4 or 5 players. And they're just lucky that they've got Pineda and Gutierrez and Brady on homegrown deals, and that they were able to get Jonathan Dean on a steal of a deal. And then they're underpaying Yorgos Koutsias, I think, at this point too. So the Fire have screwed up their financial roster building as well as the actual roster building. And if I'm Lewandowski's agent, I'm going to come in starting with like a $12 to $15 million package. Number one, look what Messi got. We all know Lewandowski is not Leo Messi, but on the flip side, Leo Messi does get Luis Suarez, Sergio Busquets, Jordi Alba. Who else is coming over? 3 young DPs from South America. Lewandowski's not getting that. So in order to overcome that, he needs to get paid more. Additionally, Shaqiri got $8 million, over $8 million coming into the league, right? And so there's no way that Robert Lewandowski, who is going to obviously be a much better MLS player for the Chicago Fire than Xherdan Shaqiri could ever hope to be, probably historically looking at it, right? You're going to be paying minimum $10 million a year for Lewandowski. So I think it is just a terrible, terrible financial deal by all aspects of it if they're going to go try and sign him. Let's see. Let me look at my other notes. Let me make sure I got all that. Oh yeah, here's the one other thing too. Can you imagine? I was texting and talking with our good friend John Donovan about this Lewandowski rumor earlier, and he goes, "Can you imagine a Chicago Fire team that has Miguel Navarro crossing the ball to Lewandowski to score a goal? He's like only in MLS, only in the Chicago Fire, right?" And here's the thing: I can't. I really can't. Like, why would you sign and pay for Lewandowski when you have nobody else on this team who can consistently move the ball forward and find him in dangerous areas? Like the Chicago Fire were terrible in key passes last season. Very, very low goal scoring, very, very low assist numbers, horrible positioning. They don't know what they're doing from an offensive standpoint. And there's no one here who can consistently work with Lewandowski to get him the ball. Maybe there's a little magic if Shaqiri sticks around. They did play together at Bayern Munich for a couple years, but pretty sure Shaqiri was still mostly coming off the bench from, I think, what years did I remember looking at that? 2012? No, 2014 and 2015, they were both on Bayern Munich. Shaqiri from 2012 to 2015 was on Bayern Munich's roster. So maybe there's a little something there, but I highly doubt it. And Lewandowski is going to play with much better players, I would say, and do much more with his career. So maybe this analysis changes if they actually sign Jordi Mihailovic, and you've got a midfield of Mihailovic and Gutierrez playing balls forward. That would be fantastic, or you have Mihailovic starting, Gutierrez coming in off the bench, or depending on the game situation, you do have them as kind of starting attacking midfielders there with a Pineda as a D mid, or gosh, I certainly hope it's not Doumbia or Gaston Jimenez or Federico Navarro anymore, unless Navarro has a bounce back season. But yeah, it's potential that it's there. But again, we don't know who the coach is. We don't know how he's going to play. So again, this whole conversation, I just think it's a bad idea to be really looking to sign your striker if you don't know anything else that's going on in your organization, roster or front office wise. All right, we have reached our sponsor break here in this episode. We want to thank, as always, and I was remiss in forgetting them last week, but we need to thank Skira Icelandic Spring Water for sponsoring the Feed the Fire podcast. They were here from the preseason. They were here from developing the show, not just episode 1. So big thanks to them. Icelandic for clear. Skira water comes from a spring in a government-protected nature preserve in Iceland with naturally low mineral content. This isn't your average water. Clearly, pun intended, it's one of the best. And you can go out and get a bottle or 2 or 3 or 4 of Skira Icelandic spring water at your local 7-Eleven. Just because the temperature is getting cooler doesn't mean you can't be any less hydrated. Go get your Skira and stay hydrated. And with that, now we come to what is probably going to be one of the more entertaining guest appearances by our featured guest, John Donovan. He sent me the sound clip, and all it said was Klopas. And I cannot wait to hear what John has to say about the former head coach, current third-time interim coach, and just kind of the one consistent, other than losing, of the Chicago Fire over the last decade or so. So with that, take it away, John. And once again, thank you to John Donovan for always being entertaining and contributing to the show. If you want to respond to John, please email me. I'll pass that along and we'll get some commentary going. glasshousesoccer@gmail.com or on Twitter @glasshousesoccer. No E on the soccer. Thank you, character limits there. But speaking of coaching moves, couple things to announce here. Phil Neville, formerly of Inter Miami, has been signed by the Portland Timbers to kind of be the coach. I guess we can say it, to kind of help through a little bit of a rebuild or a little bit of an identity change after so many years under Gio Savarese and so many years under their iconic, legendary designated players that they've had up there. So wishing Phil Neville and the Portland Timbers all the best. A lot of people say Phil Neville really got things going with Miami and really kind of knew how he wanted to do things and is a much better coach than what was reflected in his time at Miami, partly because it took him almost a whole season to get Gonzalo Higuain to finally buy in and stop being lazy, partly because Inter Miami was under such sanctions from their roster violations, and partly because they were dismantling parts of that roster and hoarding cash looking for Leo Messi, and then knowing that Neville wasn't going to be the guy to coach Messi. So in a lot of senses, Neville might have caught some bad breaks and had some bad timing with Miami. But at the same time, now's his chance that he can really prove it. And if his long-term goal is to get back and to be a manager in Europe, if he can bring some hardware to Portland, I think that would be huge for him. Also, it's been out there that reported that Chris Armas is actually really close to signing. No, not with the Fire, but with the Colorado Rapids. That to me is going to be a really interesting move if that deal does get done. We have seen Armas not really have a lot of buy-in from his locker room. The talk out of Colorado over the last several years is that Robin Fraser has been able to really coach above his roster and his salary, above the roster talent and above the salary talent on there, and getting the most out of Colorado. So it'll be interesting to see. Personally, I don't like Robin Fraser. He made some disparaging comments about Greek people a couple years back, and I've never forgiven him for it. And honestly, you can praise how great he's been with the Colorado Rapids, but they've only had, let's be honest, one really good season, and it came down to a bunch of wacky decision day results that Colorado won the West a couple of years back, and not, and didn't do anything with it. So I think his talent and his ability in Colorado has been a bit overblown. Maybe that's me being out of town stupid, but really, would he have done anything differently if he had, another $1 million spent on his roster? Guess we'll never know. But Chris Armas is close to signing as the manager for the Colorado Rapids, as has been reported recently, and that'll be an interesting take. Let's see Armas out in the Western Conference, see how he does against the likes of LAFC, Houston, Dallas, maybe St. Louis if they can continue what they've done this year. Some other MLS players on the move that we got to keep an eye on. Of course, the big news, again, coming out of Miami, Luis Suarez, who is currently with Brazilian club Grêmio, will join Inter Miami in December after the Brazilian season ends. Inter Miami has signed him to a one-year deal with a club option for a second. Suarez, 36 years old now, obviously was teammates with current Inter Miami forward Lionel Messi in Barcelona for about 7 seasons or so, 2014 to 2020. Suarez had been rumored for like 3 or 4 years. I think ever since David Beckham and Inter Miami got this franchise, Suarez has been rumored to come. I don't think he's ever been rumored outside of Miami. Maybe in New York City. Maybe I did hear that at one point. But yeah, he has been rumored for years, and now that Messi is here, Suarez is following suit. Also, this was a little bit more obvious when the club announced that they were not going to re-sign Joseph Martinez. Now, as far as like on the field play, they're getting a solid striker, and I only say solid because of Suarez's age and his history of knee problems. He's had a lot of knee pain and discomfort that's required some more rest as of late than in the prime of his career, obviously. He's had knee surgeries in 2014 and 2020. So we will see what he can bring. And everything I said about Lewandowski applies for Luis Suarez. The travel is like you've never experienced in your career. The different turf and field conditions are like you've never experienced in your career. And the last thing Miami needs is to have a star-studded roster with everybody hurt. So we'll see how they can manage this. But Suarez is coming to Miami. Also, I didn't realize this about Luis Suarez. I knew he was good. I knew he was really good for his clubs. I knew he was amazing for Uruguay on the international stage. But he, according to the International Federation of Football History and Statistics, ranks 18th all time in total goals. He has scored 539 career goals for club and country. 18th all-time leading scorer in football history, Luis Suarez. Now, the Chicago Fire did make a move. We can't forget their $100,000 general allocation money move, trading the Homegrown. You can see just how excited I am about this, and reporting it all out here to you. But it is a good piece of business, so let me get through this here. Chicago Fire have traded midfielder Leonardo Orejarena. They've traded his homegrown rights to FC Dallas for $100,000 in general allocation money, 2024 general allocation money, and potentially up to an additional $300,000 in GAM if he meets certain performance standards. The Fire are also going to retain a sell-on percentage should Dallas transfer him and make a transfer fee off of it. He ended up then, Orejarena ended up signing a contract with North Texas SC, FC Dallas's MLS Next Pro side, through the 2025 season. So he is already guaranteed to be getting a lot more playing time and a lot more coaching and a lot more scouting and looks and experience playing with North Texas than he ever would have playing with the Chicago Fire system. He's 15 years old. Dallas is already putting them on their second team. Like I don't know if he had a lot of time on CF2. I don't remember seeing his name a lot. But again, it shows you that the Chicago Fire don't yet have the coaching infrastructure in place to be able to identify this talent and push them up. They don't have, and I've talked about it in episodes past, like how in Major League Baseball, when you have 5 or 6 teams in your organization all feeding up to the senior team, the MLB team, like a unified way of coaching, a unified system, culture, habits, things they're doing in training, skills they're working on, the way they play the game, right? You heard it in the NFL, the Patriot way. No matter what player came into the New England Patriots under Bill Belichick, there's a certain expectation that they do things a certain way. Feelings about Belichick, Patriots, Brady aside, there's that, or you hear it in college football from the Midwest. Yeah, are you a Michigan man, right? They do things a certain way there. Now, lately, that certain way has potentially been cheating and sign stealing, but that's the philosophy, right? The Chicago Fire don't have that, or at least we haven't seen it. They don't have. That's what I'm going to say. They don't have that. So you've got this young budding talent, but they don't know what to do with him. So they might as well get something for him, right? And honestly, this is a good bit of business, despite the fact that you couldn't get this 15-year-old some actual minutes, competitive minutes, and evaluate him. Dallas obviously values him. They traded for his rights and signed him to a 2-year deal. But this player actually left the Chicago Fire Academy and went to the Barcelona Residency Academy out in Arizona. So he, for whatever reason, leaves the MLS pathway. Maybe he had different aspirations. So this is good business by the Fire then, that they actually are going to get something for him. And Orejarena was called up to the U17 youth national team this year, the American youth national team. So he does have a bright future. So for the Fire to get up to $400K in GAM plus a sell-on fee for a 15-year-old, that does seem like a good piece of business, which is odd for me to say about the Chicago Fire organization at this point and time. But again, hey, this kid's probably going to crush it for North Texas. Probably going to get a bunch of first-team minutes in 2025, 2026, score a few bangers against the Fire, MLS best 11, and then the Fire are just going to be saying, yeah, go ahead, transfer him and give us our cut, right? Soccer fans, That's everything I had for you all today. I really appreciate you all tuning in, listening for all this time, especially in the off season. Pardon me for putting this episode out a day later, but I appreciate the extra time you're giving me to rest up the pipes here, rest up those vocal cords. Enjoy all the playoffs has to offer. Enjoy all the crazy rumors coming in and out during this off season, and we will talk to you again next week.